Right now, a multi-billion-dollar industry is betting that you will hand over funding $400 for a problem that completely disappears the second you look at a piece of paper hidden in your own glove box. In fact, 90% of the people who pay for this specific service are driving cars that run flawlessly, yet they walk out of the service bay convinced their engine is on the verge of a catastrophic meltdown. It is the single most profitable illusion in the entire automotive world, a masterclass in psychological warfare designed to separate you from your cash using nothing but four-letter words and a manufactured sense of urgency. Let me tell you exactly how this trap snaps shut. On March 4th, 2025, a woman pulled into my shop holding a folded service estimate like it was a court summons. She was driving a 3-year-old crossover with about 31,000 miles on the odometer. There was absolutely nothing wrong with the vehicle. It started instantly, it idled perfectly, and it shifted without a single hesitation. She had gone to the dealership for a simple routine oil change. That is it. But she left the service counter with a printed sheet recommending a premium fuel induction package, a throttle body cleaning, and a comprehensive fuel injector service. Stacked together with a couple of unrelated line items, the grand total came to just over $400. But the part that bothered her the most, the part that actually induced the panic, was the specific phrase the service advisor used when handing her the paperwork. He looked her in the eye and said, "Our technician knows your system needs it." That sentence is a lie. It is a carefully calibrated, corporate-approved sales script designed to sound like an expert diagnosis when, in reality, it is nothing more than an automated financial trigger. Today, I am going to expose exactly why that statement is mechanically impossible, why this specific bundle is the ultimate cash cow for dealerships, and how the manufacturer's own engineering guide quietly tells you to completely ignore it. I have spent more than 20 years turning wrenches, buried deep in the grease of the workshop floor, seeing exactly what the marketing departments and sleek showroom floors don't want you to know. This exact scene plays out every single week in every town across the country. A driver brings their vehicle in for a basic, low-cost maintenance item. They sit in the waiting room, drink the complimentary coffee, and 20 minutes later, an advisor walks out with a clipboard. Suddenly, the conversation shifts to urgent, technical, and deeply intimidating concepts. You start hearing phrases like carbon buildup, restricted flow, system varnish, and contaminated intake tracks. By the time the advisor finishes their pitch, you feel like declining the service is an irresponsible gamble with the life of your engine. So, you hand over the credit card. And here is the uncomfortable truth the industry desperately hides from you. In the vast majority of cases, you just spent 4 figures correcting a problem that fundamentally does not exist. To understand the scale of this extraction, we need to strip away the blurry marketing labels and look at what these services actually entail in the physical world. The names are kept vague on purpose to make them sound like advanced aerospace engineering. But on the shop floor, the reality is incredibly basic. First, the fuel injection service or fuel system cleanup. This sounds like a precision calibration. In reality, it means a technician hooks a pressurized can of liquid solvent directly to your engine's fuel rail and runs the vehicle until the can is empty. Second, the throttle body cleaning. This sounds like an intricate mechanical overhaul. In practice, it involves removing a flexible rubber boot, spraying an aerosol cleaner onto a small metal butterfly plate inside your air intake, and wiping away a thin layer of surface film with a rag third, the air induction service. This consists of dripping a chemical solvent into the vacuum line or intake tract while the engine runs, hoping to dissolve whatever soft deposits might be resting inside. When a dealership wants to maximize a repair order, they take these 3 procedures, bundle them together, toss in a legitimate but low-cost safety fluid exchange like a brake flush, add a tire balance package, and effortlessly scale the invoice up to that terrifying $400 threshold. I see real owners post these exact estimates online constantly. They show a 3-way chemical cleaning quoted at $360, stacked neatly on top of a $190 fluid flush, stacked on top of a highly inflated wheel and tire maintenance package. Not a single one of those line items was triggered by a dashboard warning light. Every single one was triggered by a milestone on a service advisor's calendar. Now, look at the single most important tool you possess to completely neutralize this tactic. It is sitting right inside your vehicle at this exact moment. If you open your glove box, pull out the factory warranty and maintenance booklet, and flip directly to the schedule of required services, you will notice something incredibly revealing. You will not find a single line instructing you to clean the throttle body at 30,000 miles. You will not find a single reference to mandatory induction cleanings or pressurized injector flushes at any milestone. The multi-billion-dollar corporation that spent years engineering, testing, and ultimately warrantying your specific engine does not list any of these elaborate procedures as required maintenance. Think about the logic of that. If your engine genuinely required a funny $100 chemical bath to survive past 30,000 miles, the manufacturer would absolutely mandate it to protect themselves from massive warranty claims. Instead, what the factory manual actually calls for at these intervals is something so small it is almost laughable: adding an inexpensive fuel additive directly into the gas tank. That is the entire extent of the factory's recommendation. The dealer pours a small bottle of fluid through your fuel filler door, the exact same type of bottle you can purchase at any local auto parts store for less than the cost of a fast food meal. So, why does the dealership counter aggressively push hundreds or thousands of dollars of deep chemical cleaning that the engineers who built the vehicle never asked for? The answer reveals itself the moment you follow the money. Let's look at the raw economics of the shop floor. The actual chemical solvent required to perform a dealer-level induction service costs the shop roughly $40 wholesale. They turn around and retail that exact service to you for $300 or more. That represents an astonishing $260 of pure profit on a single canister of fluid that takes a technician mere minutes to hook up. If a service drive sells just 5 of these packages a day, they are generating tens of thousands of dollars a month in pure, unadulterated margin from a single upsell category. Furthermore, you must understand how the person across the counter is compensated. Service advisors are not unbiased consumer advocates. They are corporate salespeople paid largely on commission based on the total dollar volume of parts and labor they push through that door. The financial incentive is never to evaluate whether your specific engine actually requires a deep chemical intervention. The incentive is purely to sell the intervention, which brings us right back to that magic phrase designed to shut down all your defenses. The technician noticed it needs it. Here is the mechanical reality that blows that entire claim wide open, a reality you can easily verify for yourself. Carbon buildup inside a modern throttle body or along the hidden passages of an intake system is completely sealed away from view. It cannot be seen during a standard multi-point inspection. To actually see those components, a technician would have to laboriously disassemble your vehicle's air intake tract, remove protective shields, and physically peer inside with a specialized scope. Nobody is performing that level of complex mechanical teardown for free during a 20-minute oil change. Therefore, when an advisor tells you that a technician physically saw that your clean system requires a deep chemical flush, what they actually mean is that your odometer simply crossed a predetermined number on their internal dealership sales sheet. It is a mileage trigger, dressed up as an expert clinical diagnosis. It is specifically formulated to sound like mechanical expertise, but in reality, it is just a highly effective sales script. To completely free yourself from the anxiety that drives these transactions, you have to understand exactly how your vehicle interacts with modern fuel and why the engine is already doing the heavy lifting for you. But as with any illusion, there is a very specific, highly technical exception to this rule. A hidden mechanical reality where carbon turns into a genuine engine killer, and the dealership actually turns out to be right. If you don't know how to spot this one specific engineering design, you could end up destroying your engine by declining the exact service you think is a scam. Here's the fix most dealers won't mention, and it costs less than a tank of gas. You do not need a high-pressure, 4-figure chemical treatment administered by a dealership to keep a healthy engine running at peak efficiency. The secret to maintaining your fuel system is already engineered into the chemistry of modern retail fuels. And when your system does need an extra boost, the solution is something you can execute yourself in less than 2 minutes right at the gas pump to beat the system. You first have to understand the distinction between the massive upsell and the legitimate mechanical exception I just mentioned. As I said before, there is a scenario where carbon buildup is a real, physical threat: direct injection engines. On an older style, port injection engine, the fuel injector sprays gasoline into the intake tract right behind the intake valve. Because modern gasoline is heavily treated with detergent packages, that fuel constantly washes over the intake valves every single time the engine breathes. It is a continuous, self-cleaning cycle. But on a modern direct injection engine, the fuel injector is moved inside the combustion chamber. It sprays gasoline directly into the cylinder. This is incredible for fuel economy and power, but it creates a massive engineering side effect. That detergent-rich gasoline never touches the back of your intake valves. Over tens of thousands of miles, oil vapors from the crankcase ventilation system bake onto those hot valves, forming a crusty layer of carbon. Left unchecked over a long period, that carbon acts like a sponge, soaking up fuel and disrupting the precise airflow your engine needs to run smoothly. If you are driving a modern direct injection vehicle and you cross the 90,000 or 100,000 mile mark, you might start noticing legitimate symptoms. Your engine might stumble slightly when you first start it on a cold morning. You might experience a subtle hesitation when you step on the gas to merge onto the highway. Or your fuel economy might drop by 2 or 3 miles per gallon without any obvious explanation. In those specific high-mileage scenarios, a professional intake cleaning, often using crushed walnut shells to safely blast the baked-on carbon off the valves, is a completely legitimate repair. But it is a heavy mechanical fix for an actual high-mileage problem, not a preventative maintenance ritual for a healthy car with 30,000 miles on the clock. For the other 99% of situations, including that 31,000-mile crossover that inspired this video, the real fix is incredibly simple. And it comes down to a specific chemical compound called polyethylamine, or PEA. PEA is the most robust, heat-resistant detergent known in the automotive chemical industry. Unlike cheaper solvents that vaporize and disappear the moment they hit a hot engine cylinder, PEA survives the intense temperatures of combustion. This allows it to travel through the system, chemically bonding with stubborn carbon deposits, softening them and allowing them to be cleanly burned off and swept out through the exhaust over several days of normal driving. Here is exactly how you apply this fix yourself. You do not need special tools, you do not need a mechanical lift, and you do not need to disconnect a single vacuum line under your hood. Step 1 is sourcing the correct chemical. You want to look for a dedicated fuel system cleaner that lists polyethylamine, or PEA, directly on the back label, or rely on professional-grade formulas that mechanics use when they want actual results. Highly trusted options include Chevron Techron Concentrate Plus, Gumout Regain Complete Fuel System Cleaner, Royal Purple Max Clean, or BG44K. A single bottle of these concentrates will cost you between $7 and $20 depending on the brand and the size of your tank. Step 2 is timing the application. Wait until your vehicle's fuel gauge drops down to empty, or right when you pull up to the gas station to fill up. Step 3 is the execution. Open your fuel door, unscrew the cap, and pour the entire bottle of concentrate directly into the empty tank. Immediately after pouring the chemical in, insert the gas pump nozzle and fill the tank completely with fresh fuel. Doing it in this exact order is critical because the rushing stream of incoming gasoline completely mixes and agitates the concentrated detergent throughout the entire tank, ensuring an even, consistent distribution as you drive. Step 4 is simply driving the car. You do not need to drive aggressively or take a massive road trip. Just use the vehicle normally for your daily commute. As you consume that tank of fuel, every single drop traveling through your fuel pump, lines, and injectors carries a microscopic dose of high-strength PEA, gradually dissolving surface varnish and maintaining the factory spray pattern of your injectors. For a healthy vehicle under 100,000 miles, doing this just twice a year, roughly every 6 months, provides all the preventative fuel system maintenance your car will ever need. Let me show you a real-world example of how this plays out when you choose facts over fear. A regular customer of mine brought in his commuter sedan, a vehicle with roughly 45,000 miles on it. He had taken it to a regional service center for a state inspection, and the shop tried to sell him a $380 fuel system restoration package, claiming his injectors were likely restricted and causing invisible performance loss. He declined, brought it to my shop, and asked for an honest evaluation. We hooked the vehicle up to our diagnostic scanner and looked at the long-term fuel trims, the live data that shows exactly how hard the computer has to work to compensate for restricted fuel or air. The numbers were perfectly within normal factory parameters, meaning the injectors were spraying beautifully. I told him to skip the shop treatment entirely. Instead, we spent $12 on a high-quality bottle of PEA cleaner, poured it into the tank right there at the shop, and I told him to go drive it. 6 months later, the car returned for a standard oil change. The fuel trims were still perfect, the engine idled like silk, and he had saved over $360 by spending 10 minutes treating the car himself. However, as simple as this fix is, you must be aware of the common mistakes and dangerous misconceptions that catch drivers off guard. The biggest misconception is thinking that if 1 bottle of chemical cleaner is good for your engine, then 5 bottles must be amazing. This is a massive mistake. Over-concentrating your fuel system with aggressive chemical detergents can degrade the sensitive rubber seals inside your fuel pump or cause damage to the protective coatings inside your fuel tank. Stick strictly to the manufacturer's dosage instructions on the bottle. Usually 1 treatment every 3,000 to 5,000 miles is the absolute maximum. The second major mistake is falling for generic fuel additives that rely on cheap, old-school solvents like alcohol or basic kerosene. These cheap additives do nothing but dilute your fuel, and they evaporate long before they can break down modern carbon deposits. If the bottle doesn't explicitly state it contains PEA or advanced synthetic detergents, you are essentially pouring expensive paint thinner into your gas tank. Finally, never use a fuel tank additive as a substitute for a mechanical diagnostic if your car is actually broken. If your dashboard has a flashing check engine light, or if your engine is actively shaking and misfiring, a bottle of chemical cleaner in the gas tank is not going to magically repair a dead ignition coil, a blown fuse, or a physically cracked intake boot. The chemical fix is an incredibly potent tool for maintaining a healthy, functional fuel system and clearing minor surface deposits, but it cannot rebuild broken metal. Know what your vehicle actually needs. Understand the physical limitations of the technology, and you will never find yourself defenseless at the service counter again. When you take control of your vehicle's maintenance and stop falling for the dealership's manufactured panic, the long-term gains go far beyond the immediate $400 you keep in your wallet. By implementing this simple, chemistry-backed approach, you are choosing to run your vehicle exactly the way its engineers intended. The long-term impact of maintaining a clean, unrestricted fuel delivery system means you preserve your engine's factory-spec fuel economy, keep its throttle response crisp, and significantly extend the lifespan of your fuel injectors and catalytic converters. Think about what happens inside that engine over 50,000, 70,000, or 100,000 miles. When you consistently use a high-quality PEA cleaner twice a year, you prevent the gradual distortion of the fuel injector's spray pattern. A distorted spray pattern creates microscopic droplets of fuel that are too large to burn completely during the combustion stroke. That unburnt fuel travels down your exhaust pipe, where it bakes onto the delicate precious metals inside your catalytic converter, eventually clogging it and triggering a repair bill that easily reaches into the thousands. By spending less than $30 a year on targeted maintenance, you are actively insulating yourself from the most common high-mileage failures that plague modern commuter vehicles. But keeping your hard-earned money and protecting your hardware is only the first step. To truly maximize the longevity of your engine and ensure that you never have to stand defenseless in front of a service advisor again, you need to layer this chemical fix with 3 complementary everyday habits. The first and most impactful habit is choosing where you buy your fuel. You need to look for a small, distinct logo on the gas pump that reads Top Tier. This is not a marketing gimmick, and it is not a brand name. Top Tier is an industry-wide performance standard established in 2004 by a coalition of the world's leading automotive manufacturers, including Toyota, General Motors, Ford, Honda, and BMW. These manufacturers realized that the minimum detergent standards required by government regulations were simply not high enough to keep modern, tight-tolerance engines clean. When a fuel brand carries the top-tier certification, it means their gasoline contains up to 2 to 3 times the amount of engine cleaning detergents required by law, and it is completely free of low-quality organometallic additives that can foul spark plugs. By consistently fueling up at a top-tier station, every single mile you drive becomes a passive, continuous cleaning cycle. You are essentially brushing your engine's teeth with premium toothpaste every single day, making those aggressive, high-pressure dealer flushes even more irrelevant. The second complementary habit is keeping a vigilant eye on your engine's air filtration system. Your engine is essentially a massive air pump. For every single gallon of gasoline it burns, it consumes roughly 10,000 gallons of air. If your engine air filter is clogged with dirt, dust, and road debris, the engine's computer has to constantly alter the fuel-to-air ratio to keep the car running. A restricted air filter creates a high vacuum environment inside your intake tract, which actively pulls more oil vapors through the crankcase ventilation system and deposits them directly onto your throttle body plate and intake valves. Checking your engine air filter takes less than 60 seconds. On most modern vehicles, you don't even need tools. You simply unclip 2 or 3 metal tabs on top of the plastic airbox. Pull the filter out and hold it up to a bright light or the sun. If you can't see light passing through the pleats, or if it is caked in gray debris, replace it immediately. A fresh, $20 air filter is the absolute best defense you have against the physical accumulation of carbon in your intake system. The third habit is an operational check. Give your vehicle a regular chance to stretch its legs on the highway. Modern engines absolutely hate short, low-speed commuter trips, where they never reach full operating temperature. When you drive only 3 or 4 miles to the grocery store and shut the engine off, the internal components never get hot enough to activate the self-cleaning properties of the fuel detergents. Once every week or two, take your vehicle out on the open highway and drive it at sustained highway speeds for at least 20 to 30 minutes. This allows the engine block, engine oil, and exhaust system to reach their peak thermal efficiency, naturally baking off moisture accumulation in the oil and blowing out light carbon soot before it has a chance to solidify. Now, while this proactive strategy is incredibly effective, being an informed vehicle owner means understanding the potential trade-offs and realities of modern vehicle operation. For example, if you decide to drive your vehicle in its built-in sport mode or choose to manually hold lower gears to keep the engine RPMs higher in an attempt to burn off carbon faster, you must accept a noticeable drop in your short-term fuel economy. Keeping the engine revving higher creates more thermal energy, which can assist in keeping valves clean, but it forces the fuel injectors to fire much more frequently, consuming more gasoline without providing any magical, instant cleaning shortcut. Furthermore, you must accept that even with the absolute best fuel, the highest quality PEA additives, and perfect highway driving habits, a tiny amount of natural wear and microscopic carbon accumulation is an unavoidable reality of internal combustion over a decade of ownership. A machine with thousands of moving parts exploding thousands of times a minute will never stay visually pristine inside, and that is completely okay. Your goal is not to maintain a surgically sterile laboratory environment under your hood. Your goal is to maintain functional, reliable mechanical health while ignoring the salesperson who treats a completely normal speck of dust like a mechanical emergency. This is where the ultimate mindset shift happens, and it is the most valuable lesson I can give you after 20 years in the shop floor trenches. The moment you realize that you hold the exact same information as the engineers who built your car, the balance of power completely shifts back to you. You no longer have to stand at a service counter feeling an undercurrent of anxiety or guilt when an advisor pressures you to sign a line item that isn't in your manual. You no longer have to treat an automobile like a fragile, mysterious black box that requires constant, expensive chemical life support just to survive a morning commute. Your vehicle is a remarkably resilient, highly engineered piece of machinery. It was built by teams of the best designers in the world who explicitly wrote down a step-by-step roadmap for its survival in that little maintenance booklet in your glove box. Trust that roadmap. Trust the chemistry of high-quality fuel and targeted PEA cleaners. The next time you see a service advisor walk towards you with a grim expression and a printed sheet full of expensive, unrequired fluid cleanings, you can smile politely, look them in the eye, and confidently say, "No thank you, just the oil change today." You have the facts, you know the chemistry, and you are entirely in the driver's seat. Keep your keys, keep your cash, and keep driving with total